Chaos back again. So today I'm bringing you one final video here from 2.0 before the release of Reaper Souls. So this is what, 3 in the morning right now, and Reaper Souls should be releasing in about 9 p.m. my time. So I just want to go ahead and show one final iteration of the build that I'm going to be using in Reaper Souls to progress to 70 and hopefully even start farming Torment 1 when I get there. So you guys have seen my other videos. Let's just start with the gears. Build first. I sold all my gems at the end of auction house, so I had to recollect all my gems, and I got to a point where I got back to star gems with the diamonds, and even without them I was actually doing okay farming a cat 4 with T6. So these are my stats right now unbuffed, and these are my buff stats and Paragon points. Let's go skim through those really quick. And in the build, this isn't going to be a build guide, so I'm just going to go run through cat 4 really quick, show you guys what I'm going to be running with. I'll explain the actual build anyways, just for the fact that I'm going to be doing this. This is the reason why I'm doing the video, or else I'd just be straight playing. I've dropped Call of the Ancients purely for the fact that they are kind of buggy at the moment. I just feel that a lot of times I just see them standing around not doing much of anything. And when I kill really fast, what happens is that I have this issue with them not being able to hit enough times to really gain me the fury to continue my rampage. So instead of keeping them around, actually not doing much, I just gone ahead and I dropped them. And not having to fight against the one barb that does a side leg slam is actually pretty nice. So what I put in lieu of that is, you see that I have ground stomp now. And ground stomp is really nice for those really weird packs that have like all the CC controls and stuff like that. It's just a nice quality of life skill to have. So I really like having that in my bar. And I'm using the fire rune on the ground stomp to kind of do like this massive AoE after a pull. And the crits basically will resonate bloodshed, and once again, just synergize with the build really well. Gear wise, because I'm no longer using a 4-piece IK set, I'm also opening myself up to other gear pieces, and one of which you guys have probably noticed is going to be the belt that gives you a sprint during Warcry. So here's a pack. So what I could do is just pull them, and look at that life just disappearing. So in about what, maybe 15 seconds there, the entire pack would die because I had ground stomp. That initial pull is so important because that's before they can actually cast any effects. And by doing that, that was a T6 blue pack in about like 15 seconds or so.
Still recharging.
Now this build here, because I am going without Call of the Ancients, I am using my 2 cost reduction rings, which I'm not too happy about because you guys know that, these guys here I don't want them to scale with Reaper Souls. Saving graces though, my plan is to get the set ring, and the set ring would then allow me to wear Cinder Coat when I do finally get one. And when that happens, I'm going to have no more problems of having to switch out my Skullgrass for the set ring. So that should be pretty good in general. Just going to Nemesis Bracer this right here. I usually like to stop after a pull, but I mean, these shrines, they just spawn the mobs on top of you, so it's better just to get them all clustered and get a few good hits in before doing anything else. I am doing, you notice that I have a diamond in my helm, so I'm really working and focusing on cooldown reduction, because this build, as you can see on my bar, there's quite a few cooldown seals. And per usual, when they're down to the final mob or something like that, they're not as easily killed. Just purely for the fact that this build is of course based off of, it's based off of Brawler and also Bloodshed procs. So when I'm down to one final boss, it's going to be a little slower than it was in the pack. That's why for Horde build or Horde elites, I usually like to pull them and then stun them right away while they're in a tight pack, like, you know, like that. And usually the minions will die before the stun wears off. That's how quickly this build has evolved into killing things. And this is before Cinder Code, so, you know, there's still room for improvement. Now, because I did drop Sprint, I was running a Sprint build, which I haven't shown in any of my other videos. I actually did the same build that is in one of the PTR videos, where it was all spenders. I had Sprint in there, Call of the Ancients. Because I lost Sprint, the run times are a little bit longer, but I am a lot safer because I also have Warcry in this build in lieu of Sprint. And Warcry, of course, is more utilitarian versus Sprint. I'm not really happy with Sprint as a skill, just purely for the fact that Sprint does nothing but provide you speed, and it takes up one active slot, which is really important.
Still recharging. I'm healed.
Right now my run times are maybe in the 9 minutes mark. I was doing 7 to 8 minute clears before, so it's a little bit longer without Sprint, and most of the time it's wasted walking, but the fights are actually a lot faster, so I actually like this setup quite a bit. Just purely for the fact that it keeps me safer, and thus giving me more I would say XP per minute, I think, even though my run times are a bit longer. Before, I mean, a hard pack of elites would really hinder me with the old build. With this, most of the elites are dead before I even find out what effects they are, so this is actually, you know, one of the advantages by focusing on combat first and speed second. And I think this is a happy medium right now too, because I was really focused on either, you know, HP or DPS, and neither of which were, you know, really balancing me. So when I went heavy DPS, I would die to most of the most, you know, ridiculous things. And when I went EHP, it felt like I was so slow that it wasn't really worth it. This is a happy medium, and I like it quite a bit.
Still recharging.
And this will be the build that, once again, I'm going to be taking into Reaper Souls to try to reach 70 with. And I will have a group to do it with, I'm pretty sure. So it would be a really quick, you know, 60 to 70 in my opinion. I think we might try to just go Torment 1 all the way through, just so we can unlock bounties, because I think all of the clanmates of mine, we are planning on getting a set ring as one of the first things to do before we mess with anything else, you know, alternatively, whether it be leveling Crusader or, you know, something silly, like maybe testing Uber Diablo, something like that. And most of my clanmates, if not all of them, have no beta experience, so this should be our pretty interesting first week, let's say, of release. Yeah, usually I leave stragglers, it's just not worth like with 3 seconds to hit them or something like that. Because instead you could be hitting a pack of things like that. That's 18 in 1 hit on T6. That's why I love Hammer the Ancients and Bloodshed. Okay, well that's a clear. So let me port back into town and let's talk a little bit more about the build setup. I don't know how long that run was, but I'll probably look back in the video and time it as a benchmark. Okay, so as far as items go, so these are my buff stats. I'm under 200k DPS. A lot of people would, you know, recommend you being over that, but once again, that DPS number is just a number. Toughness is also just a number. One you want to focus on is you see that I have 8200 armor, about 80 or 836 resist. I can actually fine tune this in Paragon points, but because I switched out my shoulders earlier, that skewed a little bit, but you know, 10 to 1 is what you want to aim for, really close to that. Not too unhappy about where the ratio is right now. These numbers are actually work pretty well. Now I can tell you right now though, without superstition reducing the 20% from elemental damages, fire chains and the like still really burn through me pretty quickly. So you know, this mitigation might seem high with the buff. We're looking at 73%, you know, 73% for both of these guys here. They might look okay for now, but it really still pretty paper thin when you start fighting fire chains. I do have 4200 life per second. This is quite high for the level, and I've reduced it about, you know, 300 something from switching up my shoulders. But basically with this one here, it's still good enough sustain. It helps you heal, helps you do a lot of things. The 220 life per hit and stuff like that, not really necessary. But the life on Fury spent, once again, is my heavily recommended you know, effects for healing, especially with two-handers, because a lot of times what happens is that when you're attacking, you just want that extra little bit so you can stand around. Dual wielding will be better, but you will run out of fury. So with two-handers, it's more sustainable, and you can kind of gauge when you really want it or need it. Maximum fury, I'm up to 187, so that's a total of, well, I think like 37% or something like that extra crit hit chance for Hammer of the Ancients. Cost reduction, I'm at 10% purely from Paragon points. And a Fury generation, this is with the Templar. The 0.4 comes from him. The 4 comes from, you know, my 3-piece set, and also Unforgiving as a passive. The other big thing to take a look at right now is I am once again running cooldown reduction. So I only have a star gem, but it goes up only 0.5 at a time, so it's not a huge deal with the extra 4% left because it's not additive, it's multiplicative. So basically with this particular setup here, 22.58%, almost a quarter of your cooldown reduce for all the skills that are here, and it really helps when you're trying to balance cooldown skills to be your Fury generation versus Call of the Ancients, which is built around attack speed. So that's basically, well, let's actually break down the gear piece at a time. So in taking out the 4-piece set, what I've done is I've taken out the glove and also my ice climbers, which in my opinion are still really good boots. The reason why I took them out is, as you can see from the results of the fights, I can usually kill things before a set of globes or the second set of globes that come up. So if they, you know, had frost orbs or something like that, or jailer, they're usually 90% dead by the time that they come out of the first stun. And by the time they come out of the first stun, they might have one cast of whatever effects that they are, and if it happens to be either one of those things, a single charge would get me out of the way, and if I charge through them to get out, I would usually have a second charge ready in case anything does get hairy in about 2-3 seconds. So I took those 2 pieces out. In lieu of that, I've always wanted to use the Mage Fist because the DPS boost is so great, and this is a pretty defensive glove because it does have strength, which adds to armor, and also the all resist. And then the attack speed is not really necessary. I'm actually planning on re-rolling that to crit hit damage, and that should even give me more of a boost come Reaper of Souls. So in lieu of the IK glove, I get to wear that because I do have the IK boot. Finally found it, and that is now my 3rd piece to allow me to get the 289 fury per, or life per fury spent, and the 2 generation. That's pretty much a staple when I'm doing a 2-hand build. And also in lieu of that, I also got rid of the 4th piece, which would have been the belt too, to give me this. And my thing with the barb right now is that sprint is an Achilles heel, and the reason why I say that is because you either have it in your build and you're running more efficiently on low torments where things are safe, and in my opinion, when you're farming, you kind of have to put sprint in. I mean, without sprint, although you kill faster and stuff like that, most maps are going to have dead ends, and walking back really hinders your efficiency. So this is kind of the best marriage between having sprint and having something that's more utilitarian, once again, because sprint does nothing but take up synergies from your build. It doesn't synergize with anything anymore. It doesn't, like, say, synergize with Whirlwind that well. You're just spamming and using you know, Fury for no good reason outside of just running faster. Some builds, of course, if you use a generic generator, is less of an issue, but I'm focused more on using Hammer of the Ancients once again as my main attack because that does up EDPS, and having sprint in your bar works against that. But you know, this belt here really gives you the marriage of utility and also speed. Once again, it's not going to be 100% uptime, but if I focus more on cooldown reduction, I might get it to the point where it's maybe a couple of seconds off. And that's good enough for me, honestly speaking, because in the time that you're sprinting with 10 seconds of, you know, increased sprint speed, the 2 seconds you're spending is probably going to be in a fight somewhere, and then by the time that fight's over, you can sprint to the next pack. So that's really the key with this belt. I can't successfully get it down that low at 60, but I reckon at 70 this build is going to be increased a little bit to the point where the sprint issue is going to be non-existent. And then what else did I change on here? I think that's basically it. I mean, I lost my unity, so my crit hit damage on elites can even be higher, but because of the fact that now I'm using cooldowns for generation and my cooldowns are only at 22%, I really can't spare the extra fury to lose crit chance to lower my EDPS. So I put my skull grasp back in to have a -8 reduction on top of the 10%. To give me sustain during fights when I'm hammering a lot. Usually that reserves enough where, you know, by the time these cool down, they will refill it back up to keep and maintain my crit hit chance at about 70% level. So, you know, once ROS hits though, like I said, once I find Cinder Coat, because this armor here is not that good. Once I find Cinder Coat, this is going to go back in. Actually not this, but the set ring is going to go in. And then I'm going to have Cinder Coat along with this for another, like, you know, 20% boost on the actual chest themselves. And that should make up for the 15% elite damage here. So, you know, it's going to be something that I already thought out and worked out in my head. And hopefully it's going to pay off when that happens. So that's it for items. And as far as skills go, so what did I change? Of course, these two guys are my staple. You can see the power of Ancient Spear during the run. When you initially see a pack and you can react to it before they can do anything, it's almost an instant KO. And of course, you would want to match your DPS to the level that you're playing. If I was playing T5 per se, they would die before the stun wears off. Right now, my DPS is still a bit lower. And if it was a bit higher still, it would have the same effect. But right now I'm about like 2-3 seconds off from killing an entire pack before the stun wears off, which is in the realm of about maybe what, like 5-6 seconds. So that's pretty quick. And then Merciless Assault, you know, this is gonna stay. I try to swap this out for other things, but currently speaking, even as buggy as the skill is, I want to eliminate it from my bar, but it's still the best escape skill out there, so yeah, this is gonna stay. Warcry Invigorate, this is how I'm getting my regen up to 4200 in single player, and it's because of this. And you could get mitigation really high, but let's, you know, think about that in theory. Let's say you got your mitigation to about 90% and mobs are doing like 1,000 damage to you, right? Like nothing. You could keep increasing that and reduce it down another 5%, so you only have 5% incoming damage, and the 1,000 gets reduced halfway, and basically you're now getting taken like 500 damage, right? And ideally you will live forever, but if you can't recharge that life ever, eventually you're going to lose the war of attrition. And for me personally, I think that when you start to build enough mitigation, it becomes rather useless to stack on that much more. And what's more important is to actually get things that are easy to build up, like regen. You know, a couple of slots of regen with really good mitigation mitigates even more damage because you're healing that much more per second. So, you know, like 50 res, you know, out of like a 1,000 res is not that much. But if you throw in just a couple of items that will have like 500 to 600 regen on them, that's 1,000 life per second, which is probably more than the reduction of, you know, damage that you're taking in with mitigation itself. So 4,000 a second, I mean, you guys would be surprised how well it actually works. If you guys haven't tried it yet, you know, like I said, give it a shot. Regen, in my opinion, is still going to be my #1 thing, and if I have a Roger's Huge Stone right now in this patch or in this 2.0 setup, you'll see it even better, because with Roger's it's really hard to die even without a shield or even without dual wielding. So now this took the place of sprint once again, because this technically is a sprint. That's the reason why I can throw this in here. And if you are playing a lower torment, Invigorate might not be needed, and you could throw in charge, and then you don't have to use a second ring at that point. You could save this as a sprint between packs. After your fury's depleted, you have full fury to start in the next fight, ready to harpoon something. So charge is a good alternate to Invigorate. And I would say impunity, it's okay, but without high res and a high armor, impunity doesn't really add much because it's percentage based. So, you know, it works best when you have a lot of it, and when you have a lot of it, you're better off getting regen. I like impunity, but Invigorate's still #1 before impunity for me. So that's Warcry. Then you have Bloodshed. We all know why this is in here, because of synergy, so I'm not going to spend any time on that. Now, Ground Stomp. Here's the one that, in my opinion, I'm so happy to have. I played a few Act 4 runs on T6, And I've learned a lot from that experience, because there's a lot of mobs in there that was really hard to get near. Or even if you get near, like, you know, those Marlu guys that basically drop the meteors on you, they are like the Act 3 keyword, where they basically, or they are exactly that mob. They basically have this knockback move that they do. And, you know, as a barb, if you're doing Hammer of the Ancients, you have to get near them. Of course, I have Harpoon, but not most of you might not have that. So being able to get near them, they will still knock you back, and you got to repeat that process ad nauseum. So with Ground Stomp, what you can do is you can pull them, stun them, get your 4 or 5 hits in, get that EDPS burst, and then if they knock you back, so what? A few seconds later, you can do the combo again, and they'll be dead in a few repeated actions. Also, the Armadans, or whatever, Armadians, the ones that stun you, and then sometimes they're like those rider packs. You can't get near them if you don't stun them first, because there is just no way that you're going to survive a chain stunning from a group of those guys. So without Ground Stomp, it made Act 4 so hard that I really had to rethink my build. Although my build can literally go from, like, say, Act 1 to Act 3 pretty well prior, this build here is a little bit more Act 4 proof. And going forward in Act 5, I think this will still work regardless of the situation, because when you stun a group of mobs for like 4 seconds, that is 4 seconds of pure DPS, and 4 hammer smashes for me, I can take literally, as you can see, almost 50 to 60 million, you know, hit points off of an elite group. And that is a lot of damage, you know, to dish out in that 4 seconds, and it's 100% safe while they're stunned. So having this replacing Call of the Ancients, in my opinion, really was a Fury generation hit. Of course, you can take out Stomp and put in Foot of the Mountain, but I think, you know, the 15 extra Fury is like maybe 2 hammers. I think the 2 hammers damage is made up by this in general, just being a 360 degree nuke, because it is fire. It's a little less damaging than one single Hammer of the Ancient, but at the same time, this is done during the time of the stun, so you're saving time, which ups the DPS while they're stunned, if that makes any sense. Because if I would have gotten, like, say, the extra 15 Fury, right, I would have to hit with Hammer of the Ancient 1 extra time to make up for the damage that I lost by not hitting them while I'm stunning them. So in that fact, you know, you could leave a mob that's basically like 40 to 50% dead versus 60 to 80% dead, and that's a huge difference. The reason for that is because I have right now Ruthless in my bar, and getting the mobs down to the last 30% of health as quickly as possible is the key to killing them quick, because generally speaking, what happens is maybe 1 or 2 of those blue mobs that die, you get 1 lingering around, then Ruthless to kick in to make up for what Brawler has just lost, because you don't have anybody around him, right? So getting that burst down to the last 30, really important. So right now it's 1, 2, and then you start, you know, doing the smashes 3. This combo here, usually before the actual stun ends, will kick into Ruthless, and then Ruthless takes over from there, and the last like portion of the fight gets canceled out in a few seconds. And that's the way that my build is set up right now. Now, as far as the 4th passive, I have a few ideas. I'm thinking Bloodthirst, really good passive. But with Bloodthirst, I will not put this in until I would at least have maybe 3 to 4 pieces of gear at level 70, where they have health glow bonus, and that will actually tie into more life per Fury spent. And if you have that, it makes a really good heal for things you're about to do anyways, like doing Harpoon from a distance to pull. That heals so much, and then you're gonna smash along the way. It's just a good passive heal, so good to the point where, you know, if you could run CC with the stuns enough, you might not need regen to keep you going. The only time that regen will really be worth it then is when you get frozen, feared, stuff like that. But Bloodthirst is a really good 4th passive, so this is one option. I'm also thinking Animosity. And the reason why I'm thinking Animosity is because, of course, everything that gets generated with the Templar I will lose out in multiplayer. So to equal the feel of solo play in multiplayer, Animosity fixes all of that. And purely for the fact of just that, though, is the reason why I would have it. I've played a couple of multiplayer games, though. If your group does enough DPS, you actually save Fury by not having to hammer as often. Excuse me. And basically with them, you won't need Animosity unless you're carrying. So let's just put it that way, right? So this is another option. Inspiring Presence is gonna be interesting because I think when ROS hits and you get the 70, health pulls will rise a lot. And depending on how the balance is between Warcry Invigorate versus Inspiring Presence, whichever gives the most benefit, in my opinion, is probably going to get put in and the other one swapped out. And if I could lose Warcry, right, I would love to do that. And there's many different skills in the active slot where I could put in other than Warcry that would benefit the build greatly. So I would say Avalanche is one that I could think of right now. And you could have Wrath of Berserker for those tricky fights. You know, there's a lot of things, and you could free up one slot that will make a big difference. And if Inspiring Presence could do that for me, this is another one to look out for. Then there is Superstition, as always. If I find T170 to be a little bit squishy, I could also throw this in, and this is going to generate Fury for me when I need it most. When I need the most healing, when I'm stepping in Plague, things like that, it's just going to give me unlimited Fury to just cast, you know, like say Ancient Spear to heal up and stuff like that. So this is also another good one. It's almost always good. It's just that right now my build, because of these ground stomp, I'm in a lot safer position than I was before, where I was running around and then the mobs were, you know, free-willed to basically do as they please. But now, because they get stunned, I don't really need this mitigation as much, since I can put myself in a good position to, you know, not take any extra damage. So that's another good one there. The final ones, I would say, like these guys, of course, the new ones, right? Giving it some thought. Earthen Might's going to give you 30 Fury when attacking with Avalanche or Earthquake. So in general, you can kind of throw this in lieu of any of the generator skills, maybe Ground Stomp or anything like that, if you kill fast enough in the future, and it just give you more added DPS. But I don't think DPS for Hammer the Ancients build is the issue. The issue more so is going to be how you're going to lay that down, because you're a melee range all the time. With Earthen Might, I mean, it really depends on the rest of the build. If I could sneak in Avalanche, because this is such a heavy Fury spender, I might do it. I like Avalanche, I think, as a skill. Has a little bit of utility. Sword and Board, you know, I'm not going to be doing this at all, I don't think. At least not in an initial state. So I like this. I mean, the 6th generation for every block that you do is amazing. It's just that Sword and Board, in my opinion, you probably lose so much DPS that I still would prefer a two-hander. But this would solve a lot of issues, and I think I will play with this just for different builds' sake. And so there are some good shields out there that I think you can synergize really well with. And I got like a couple of Justice Lanterns ready to go too, so I might take advantage of that. Rampage now is really interesting. Increase the strength by 1% for every 8 seconds after killing or resisting in killing. So this is not just an on-kill proc. This is something where you just have to be near or around or hit something, and then if something dies around your vicinity, you will get the actual bonus. And this stacks up to 25 times. So 25% strength bonus. Let's say, according to, you know, most people, you're looking at maybe 10k strength. That's 2,500 strength more. And this is quite easy to get. I mean, 25 enemies. I hit what, like 18 with one Hammer the Ancients earlier with a single smash, and for 8 seconds you could literally go on a, you know, a rampage, you know, no pun intended, with this setup here. I don't know how well it's going to scale at 70, but what I know is that you will kill things quick enough with Hammer the Ancients, and since I'm using a two-hand build, it multiplies better. And, you know, dual wielding, it takes more time to lay down the same DPS, in my opinion, if you're using Hammer the Ancients. But with a two-hander, I think it's going to synergize better. Although these are, honestly speaking, I don't think these are top priority in my build, because my build is so revolved around level 60 and all the planning is around level 60. I don't think any of these synergizes well enough to replace anything that I'm doing. So once again, the main ones I will do is probably this, or this, depending on situation. So these three guys here are really high priority. This is a lower priority if I could sneak any one of these guys in, because I think utility wise they do a little bit better. But this one here I would like to have in there. This is as a backup plan B, because if the going gets too tough, this is what's going to save me. So once again, you know, this is going to be the build that I'm going to be taking into Reaper Souls. Paragon points, I'll talk a little bit about these as I'm, you know, leveling up. I don't really value vitality. I'm at like 82k 90 with the boost, so currently speaking, I don't really need any more vit than I do now. I mean, I do die once in a while. I play super reckless and try to, you know, mow things down really, or mow things down really quickly. Vitality is not necessary. Movement speed always 25% cap it. Maximum fury right after, so 1, 2, 3, 4. You could balance these as you need. But 50 vit versus 50 strength, like 50 fit is nothing. Like at level 16 you get like a couple of 100 points. It's pointless. I would strength kill things faster, get it over with, because dying is not a big issue in softcore. And in offense, now this is interesting, right? Because I had crit hit damage all the way through before, and if I max out on crit hit damage right now, even though I only have like a weak emerald in my weapon, I'm critting upwards of like 7 mil on elites on ruthless proc. So at the last 30% of their life, I'm hitting them as hard as 7 million per hit. I've seen as high as 8. But I've sacrificed it for cooldown, because cooldown is going to basically give you quicker stuns, quicker war cry with more sprint. Your charges, if they bug, they will come back quicker. So, you know, all of these skills here benefit these 3 guys here, and these 3 guys is what makes this build work. And I would highly recommend going cooldown first, crit hit damage second, crit hit chance third, and then attack speed. Attack speed is not necessary in this build. Although attack speed will help, you know, to get like maybe 1 extra hit in with Hammer of the Ancients before the stun wears off, or right as it wears off. But I don't think it's worth it, because your fury generation and your depletion will be out of sync. I would try to stick as close as 1 attack per second as possible. Just keep this at a very good pace. So defense, once again, regen is my number 1. These 2 guys here will balance, try to get a 10 to 1. And then life percentage will come last, as if your mitigation gets higher and higher, it just makes every point of life worth it more, or more worth it. And if you start to stack this before you stack this, you're just throwing extra buffer, and it's going to be harder for you to heal. So as always, 1, these guys here are going to be tied for 2, and then 3. So, you know, I would fill these guys up completely before I go to life. Even if these are 10 to 1, I'll throw it out of sync just to fill up the points before I go to life. Life percentage, last resort, I don't really care for it. And then utility reduction, as always. And the more you reduce, the more uptime that you have. More uptime that you have, more EDPS. And an area damage, this is second, because in my opinion, life on hit, even though Hammer of the Ancients gets you like a 66% I think proc coefficient, and you're hitting multiple things at once, I still don't think life on hit scales well into Reaper Souls. I think you're going to get way better mileage out of HP for fury spent, and life on hit rolls on things that are very important, like weapons, rings, and, you know, amulets, and those are slots that you really don't have opened up for healing. Whereas HP for fury spent could be found on belts. It could be a secondary, you know, when you use the passive, which is going to be the best way to acquire it, because you could get the health glow bonus, and that becomes your life per fury spent with bloodthirst. It's way better than rolling in primary, which is life on hit. So ignore life on hit completely. It is completely useless on a 2-handed bard doing Hammer of the Ancients. It's better spent on crit hit damage, crit hit chance, cooldown reduction, cost reduction. So if you could roll any of these in lieu of life on hit, you've done yourself a great favor. Of course, gold find absolutely useless. So, you know, 1, 2, I'll say 3, and then 4, because this is less useless than gold find. So that's basically it. Alrighty guys, so this is my build, and I'm just going to go ahead and stream a little bit more after this, and then, you know, it'll be in the next video, but this is going to be cut off here, and I'm going to sign out and say goodbye, and I'll see you guys in Reaper Souls. Thank you.